All right, good morning. We are live on YouTube. We want to be live on Facebook as well. So we're going to bring in our Facebook groups. Apologies for the little delay as we are just a few minutes later than normal as these things are rolling in. Good morning, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast, but I have a feeling this will be an appealing podcast to more than just Falcons fans because we're going to talk Senior Bowl. We're going to talk NFL Draft. It will have a slant towards what the Falcons need because, again, this is the Falcons Podcast. Apologies for being a little late. I'm actually having to hotspot my phone, which was sitting on my windowsill back here because it was faster in the window than it was sitting on my desk because the hotel Wi-Fi isn't good enough. So we're going to change hotel rooms next year so we can do better than this. So if we have to bail, we apologize. You'll know why. It's because the internet sucks. Nick, how are you doing in the technology capital of the United States of Seattle, Washington?
I'm doing pretty well. Not the best sleep last night. Little guy, we always make the joke. It's the most awake baby you've ever seen in the world. Like 11 p.m., 1 a.m. You feed him, you change him, and here he comes, just eyes wide open. And unfortunately, it's probably my fault because I have the world's coldest hands. So anytime I change him or anything, he is very unhappy with me. But I don't know, I need like a hand warmer or something, a blow dryer to use in the bedroom.
Exactly. Well, I sit around like Al Bundy all the time.
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Pacific Northwest, right? No, that's so it was a long night, but I'm here.
So we go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but and we're live on Thursdays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays on Broncos for Breakfast as well. So you'll be able to find us. We'll be here tomorrow as well if you want to join us. But we're going to talk a lot of Senior Bowl today. I'm down here in Mobile and was at gorgeous day yesterday. So the Senior Bowl this might be the best one ever, honestly. Jim Nagy's done a great job. And frankly, one of the reasons it's the best one ever because their scouting staff is so good. When they get 90% of the guys at the Senior Bowl get drafted, then everybody's going to come here to check these guys out. And this year they've got the quarterbacks, Nick. So first off, before we get going, we go live because we like having everybody here. We like the conversation. And we want to say hello to some folks that have come in, like Bucks, Rays, Bolts coming in nice and early. He says, hey, Scout. I do go by Scout Kennedy on Twix. Good morning. How are you this morning? Oblivion Empire, good to see you. Says, what's good, Scott and Nick? Quarterbacks wide receivers are pretty good. It's like offensive linemen are pretty good. Michael Ranquillo coming in. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. Jeremy Sean's here early. He says, morning, boys. Looking forward to hearing about the quarterbacks. Also, Brennan Rice was looking good in the highlights I saw. First 30 minutes of live action at the first practice, Brendan Rice was a star of the show. He had 3 really nice catches. You can see them when I get all of this stuff posted. I've just posted 2 of the 3 quarterbacks. Actually, who was the third one? It wasn't Michael Pratt. Who was the third quarterback? It was Penix, it was Bo Nix, and it was
escaping me right now.
Who am I missing? I know. How am I drawing a blank?
It's not Rattler. It's not Milton.
Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman.
There we go.
Yeah. So I've cut up all of those. I've got 3 of the 7 quarterbacks on the YouTube channel. Their highlights. I've got the other 4 in the hopper. It will take probably 3 hours to upload. So I'm going to hit upload when this is done, and then I'm going to leave and go to practices. And I'll get those published from practices. But Brendan Rice looked really good. He did. He looked really good. It's a good shout. Roger Cook says, afternoon, everyone from across the pond. Good to see you. Edward Brown, good to see you. He says, and this is a great question because we could go on about this. And, we always say that the wide receivers have, a big advantage when it comes to the setup of the practices. I posted the quarterback yesterday to Bo Nix. He's like, the defensive backs are getting cooked. I'm like, it's one-on-ones, man. There's no pass rush. There's no safety help. There's no tip balls. There's no nothing. You've got you and 55 yards to your left if you're lined up on the right side and 100 yards behind you. It's like even if you can find somebody that can even stay close as a defensive back, you've got a dude. You've got a dude in those situations. But I'll let you, since I've been monologuing here for a while, if you have any guys I know you watched, because there's a bunch of the guys that stood out at wide receiver yesterday.
Yeah, for me, number one who stood out had to be Ladd McConkey. I don't know if he's under the radar, so to speak, but I think he is cementing himself as a top 50 pick. Just runs really nuanced routes and violent. He's really methodical in what he does. He has a plan of action and he's able to generate separation with that. And very solid athlete. He's not going to be a giant X receiver out there, but twitchy and just looks smooth. I mean, he's walk on at Georgia, and you see the little smaller profile. You think, okay, he's just okay. He's a guy out there. No, he can ball. So Ladd McConkey, really good, and also was really impressed with Roman Wilson. Those two guys probably came in as the top two of the top four wide receivers in the Senior Bowl with their draft profiles, and they answered. Roman Wilson is smaller, definitely for sure an inside-outside kind of wide receiver. Will play mostly slot in 11, but explosive. I'm expecting 4.3 speed, and does a really good job attacking the ball despite having that small frame. So I really was a big fan of what I saw, confirming Ladd McConkey and Roman Wilson solidifying themselves as round 2, early round 3 selections.
High production slot guys, where they get 80 catches for 1,000 yards types. It was funny about Ladd McConkey because you wonder, it's like, how is he in contested catches? No idea. You know why? Because he's 3 yards separated from everybody trying to cover him. There was this one play, and I think it was Carter Bradley when I have him posted. Because I'll do Ladd probably later today. I'm going to focus on my first video that I want to put out this evening will be one-on-ones. Will be offensive and defensive line one-on-ones. Because I didn't focus on them because they don't do as much. They're not quite full pads yet. They'll go after it today. They got after it pretty good yesterday. Mm-hmm. But I'm on the quarterback. I'm starting the quarterback, and then I follow the throw. There's nobody within 5 yards of Ladd McConkey. I'm like, all right, I know you've got trouble. You've got no safety help, but I'm like, dude, he's breaking ankles out there. But I think one of the guys that I really loved that had probably, if we're adding up yardage, probably had the best day was Jamari Thrash. Mm-hmm. I think he's at Louisville. Yes. And let me see. Jamari Thrash, he measured just a tick under 6 foot, 185 pounds. Jamari Thrash had a great day. Ryan Flornay out of Southeast Missouri had a bunch of catches. He came in at just a tick over 6'1" and 200 pounds. And then the first day, there was Malachi. What is Malachi's last name?
Corley.
See, Malachi Corley. And what number was he? He was like double deuce or something. I don't have a numerical roster, and it's driving me nuts.
Malachi Corley, Western Kentucky, built like a running back. He's going to end up being 215, 220 pounds. I don't know what he is officially, and played a offense at Western Kentucky that was very old school spread oriented, where it was, quick passes out to the flat, not really asking him to get open with his routes, rather just trying to get to the ball to him quickly in space and create. And there was a game, I cannot remember, maybe it was Western Kentucky against SMU or something like that, where he just had unbelievable yak touchdowns. I mean, he looks like a running back out there in space. So right. Corley, the question is, can he run routes? Is he developed as a route runner? Because he didn't show it at Western Kentucky because of the offense.
He was phenomenal yesterday in space, when you get him in space. And it wasn't just, 5'11", 215, 220 pounds. Is he going to be a tackle breaker? He was running away from guys. He was getting the ball and accelerating past them, catching a quick slant and running away from them. Malachi Corley, Edward, is a guy that I would keep an eye on as one of those under-the-radar guys. Appreciate the question.
I wanted to give one more shout real quick at wide receiver.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's a lot of them. Really, there
I know.
There's a lot of
one
them.
more. Ricky Pearsall from Florida.
There's another one.
Florida has had really bad quarterback play and just dysfunctional offense this last season. But Ricky Pearsall, I thought, looked really good. Maybe you're talking about a guy, round 4, unless he tests really well, just because it's so deep. But he's going to work himself, I think, to a wide receiver 4 role pretty early and could even develop into one of your starting 3. So was excited for what I saw from Pearsall. He's pushing 195 pounds, so it's a solid frame. You're looking for more 200 if you can, but 195. I thought he had a pretty good day overall. And he deserved a shout out because Florida's offense, let him down a lot this season. So Pearsall, shout out, watch out for him.
Well, and I don't know, because the question was under the radar. I don't know where the radar is on these guys, except for the Roma Dunsies of the world.
Yeah.
But 6'6" of Johnny Wilson out of Florida State's going to get your attention. Mm-hmm. We talk about biases. That's one of mine. I like the big receivers, and he doesn't play like he's 6'6", 230. He plays like he's 6'6", 200. I mean, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's pretty fluid out there.
And I would say, unfortunately, the two highest stocks coming into the Senior Bowl at wide receiver were both Xavier Legette and from South Carolina and Devontae Walker.
I was going to say, if you say Tez Walker, I'm afraid you're going to say Tez Walker, aren't you?
He came in with some of the highest stock. I don't know if you don't follow college as much as the draft perspective, but he was paired obviously with Drake May at North Carolina. He transferred there, and the North Carolina got really ugly with the NCAA this season, trying to get Devontae Walker put through. They kind of they held off. He wanted to get closer to home. I think he had a dying grandparent or a parent that was in health trouble, and the NCAA dragged its feet for like 5-6 games, and they knew about it for months and months and months. So the North Carolina had a lot of problems, and he flashed with Drake May in North Carolina early and then kind of fell off, and he had a terrible day yesterday. Terrible. I'm curious to see how he bounced back. That's sometimes does matter. Like, okay, day 1 sucked. Day 2, oh, there's the guy. That says a lot about, the work ethic, the ability to bounce back. So hopefully bounce back. We're pulling for these guys. He had
a nightmare. He did. Yep. He had a nightmare day yesterday. It's one of those where it just keeps rolling on you, and he can come back. He's got the talent to do it. So that's a good shout on that one, because I don't know where his stock was, but he had a rough day. He's not as big as I thought he was either.
Yeah. A lot of people had him mocked in like the pick 30 to pick 50 range, and he looked more like a barely maybe top 100 based on the traits kind of guy.
Yeah, and he better run a 4.3 on the traits, because he's not that big. He's under 6'2". No. I mean, relatively speaking, if I want traits on a guy like that, I'm looking at Johnny Wilson first, at 6'6". Oblivion Empire says, hello, guys. Nick, you got this. You'll be a great dad. My 3rd child is due February 17th. That's awesome.
Congrats, man.
OE. But I hope everyone has a great day. Scott, good luck today. Thank you. Little sunscreens. The left side of my face and neck was a little burned. I used to be vain enough that I'd want the sun to get on my hair. Now it just burns my scalp. So kept the hat on all day yesterday. But appreciate the support for the show.
I worked in head and neck cancer before moving out to Seattle, and I saw a lot of farmers and truckers with melanoma. And let me tell you, nothing will put the fear of God on you about the sun than seeing, metastasized skin cancers.
My wife had a teammate, or not a teammate, but she went to high school with Johnny Damon. So Johnny Damon had a teammate down in Orlando, and he got a spot on the back of his neck, and it killed him. I don't know if he made it to 20. So careful out there, y'all. Be careful out there.
Yep.
Rusty has a good point here. Watching these drills, he says, I don't understand what these pointless QB drills really show. Anyone can throw a good ball with no pass rush. I think the pre-draft process, there's the phrase I was looking for when I was writing something up yesterday. I think the pre-draft process means the least for quarterbacks compared to everybody else, compared to other positions. I think it means the least. Go ahead, and then I'll cross-examine.
I think from the actual drills, it means the least, but for the stuff that we can't see, it means the most. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the meetings with the team, the whiteboard sessions, just getting the camaraderie and the connection with the coaching staff, the digging, confirming what the scouts have said, whether work ethic, intelligence, drive, all that stuff. I think that matters a heck of a lot. But the actual throwing of the football probably means the least. You're just confirming what you saw on tape. I will say there is something to be said about being live and watching these guys and seeing what their frame looks like in person and seeing what the ball looks like in person, because on TV, you just can't really capture the size and the true arm talent of some of these guys sometimes. I mean, unless they are, Josh Allen out there, but the margin. So like you go down there on the field and you say, oh, wow, Bo Nix is actually pretty built. Oh, wow, the ball does actually pop out of Michael Penix's hand. It's one of those things. You can hear it. You can see it. Also, you can see how they're interacting with teammates. All that stuff it seems small. And the no pass rush drills, when you're talking about the no pass rush drills, what are we really evaluating here? We want to see how the ball comes out. We want to see the mechanics when things are clean, because that's what you want when you want to look like there's no pass rush. When there is pass rush out there, that's what the good quarterbacks do. But mostly, you're setting up the one-on-ones for the wide receivers and cornerbacks. Somebody has to throw the football, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not really taking too much other than this is what it looks like when it's clean. And if there's something ugly, wonky, accuracy issues when there's no pass rush, then we have problems. So there's always stuff to glean.
No, of course. So I agree with everything Nick just said about what we're looking for during the pre-draft process in quarterbacks. And I still think it's the least important position for pre-draft process because there's stuff you just, well, except maybe kicking. There's stuff you just can't tell from the pre-draft process until you put them under duress in a game. So you won't generally see, Nick, wild fluctuations in the quarterbacks based on the combine, based on Senior Bowls, the way you will the more athletic positions that are more toolsy. When you see a guy come in, okay, he had 150 tackles, but he had 15 sacks, but he came in and ran a 4.8 and he's got small arms. He just dominated. That's going to knock him down. So yes, all of that is important, all the stuff that Nick said. But in this case, when you've got a guy like Bo Nix who is deemed a system quarterback, or if you're taking a guy who runs a non-pro offense or something that the pros do so many different things now. There's really no such thing as a non-pro offense, but Oregon does so much side to side and so much underneath that there are questions about Bo Nix and his arm strength. He didn't answer those questions yesterday. Mm-hmm. He was very consistent, very accurate, very calm, very poised, but he didn't let it rip. And if I don't see him let it rip in the pre-draft process, I'm going to wonder if he can. I'm like, okay, do I have Danny Werfel here? Or do I have, because Danny Werfel is one of the best college football players of all time, but he didn't have an NFL arm. He didn't have an arm to hit that outside hash. To hit that deep out over the middle. The speed's too fast for the game. So we're waiting to see that really. And, if it was baseball, you just have a radar gun. You go, okay, throw me your fastball. 85, yeah, 5th round. That's where it is going to matter. But otherwise, Rusty, I agree. But I'll tell you what, dude, the quarterbacks here are good, and it makes everything better. Because when I don't have a quarterback that can throw an accurate ball, I don't know anything about the damn wide receivers. I don't learn about the defensive backs. These quarterbacks are good. They are good. And I'm not learning too much new from what I watched during the season. The other part of that is a lot of these guys aren't watching during the season. They've got their own jobs to do. So this is not necessarily their first look, but this really is their guys like me. This is my first real look at these guys to get a judge of their frame, to get a judge of their arm. But once I get an interest, if it piques my interest, Rusty, if I say, okay, I need a quarterback, I like this guy, I'm going to go back. And in the next 3 months, I'm going to watch everything he's done for the last 2 years.
Yeah. And so it matters, but honestly, like the thing that matters most about the quarterbacks is the stuff we can't see. It's the intangibles, it's the intelligence, It's getting these guys, talking with the coaching staff and breaking down film and breaking down concepts and going through the progressions based on whatever they want. So it is important, but the just drop back, one-on-ones on the perimeter, they're essentially playing the jug machine on that one. So I wouldn't get too caught up in that unless they are just absolutely buffaloing that opportunity. Then we have problems.
Yep. Greg, Custom Kicks, good to see you. Appreciate the super chat, my friend. He says very pleased with what Raheem Morris, Shane Morris. God, it's the problem with getting older is you get these old names stuck. Shane Morris was a quarterback from 15 years ago with 5 stars next to his name that went to Michigan. I'm sitting here talking quarterbacks, and all of a sudden Shane Morris is coming ahead. Raheem Morris is doing behind the scenes. So give announcers some slack when they start saying old guys' names when they're doing football games. He's learning from his mistakes and building correctly. If he does the same things at 47 as he did at 33, he wasted 14 years of his life. That's maturity. Absolutely. We talk about developing players all the time. How about coaches developing? The idea that he can't improve, like I said, that's a little disingenuous. Now, some guys we've seen get multiple opportunities and they don't necessarily improve and they just keep getting recycled back and job. Oh, this guy's been offensive coordinator at 10 different places. Yeah, he's gotten fired and sucked at every single one of them, but his resume looks nice. This will be a second chance for him, and a second chance might be your last chance. So, but I'm not going to take his record at Tampa Bay when he was a 30-year-old kid and make a judgment on what he can do now. I like what he's done since then a lot. I like the staff he's putting together a lot. I like what Terry Fontenot has helped build with the draft and free agency. Not as much. Free agency was awesome. The draft, I still have some questions there. I still have my concerns. Draft mostly good, but some head scratchers in there, Nick.
Yeah, it's we'll see how they play out. But yeah, you should be excited about Morris. It seems like somebody who's going to put together a good staff, and it was definitely his turn. I'm glad he's getting his shot. When he had it with Tampa, young, didn't really know what he didn't know. And now he's been in a lot of different staffs, coach on both sides of the ball, rubbed elbows with a lot of very good coaches as well. So he's going to be fine. Excited to see what he can do. We'll be curious to see what the defense looks like. Bringing in Lake. Is Morris going to be calling it more so? Can they keep up what Nielsen had last season? What is the offensive direction as well with Robinson there? But should be a good coaching hire, and excited to see what he can do.
Yep. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate the help for us today. Dylan Von Arks, good to see you. Good morning, Dylan. Hope you're doing well. Does a lot for us on Mile High Huddle. It's good to see you in here as well. And Mike Swanker has a good question. He says, if Caleb Williams didn't go into the draft, who would be the number one pick this year?
If Caleb Williams wasn't in the draft, it would probably be Drake May, but Jaden Daniels would be having a conversation, and there'd be the potential that somebody loves Marvin Harrison Jr. enough that they just say, screw it, we're taking that guy, kind of like the Myles Garrett draft where he went first overall. I don't think it's that level, but
the quarterback, Drake May's better quarterback prospect than anybody that was in that draft, prospect-wise.
As a prospect, yeah, which is kind of funny in hindsight because that draft had Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson in it, but you're talking prospects. Prospects,
yeah. So if you're, I had the conversation yesterday, or made the point of it yesterday in a chat that if there is no CJ Stroud in this draft, talking about being able to turn it around, I'm like, listen, if CJ Stroud was in this draft, he'd be QB4. That's just now. Maybe will any of these three guys be? If you're going behind Bryce Young, you're going behind Jaden Daniels. Will any of these guys have the rookie season that CJ Stroud had? Probably not. But to say there's no CJ Stroud in this, he'd be the fourth. I'm not regrading on hindsight. I'm not going to do that, y'all. I said I said I would take Bryce Young over CJ Stroud, but I was very adamant about CJ Stroud going number 2. I think because there was talk about him falling farther than that last year.
Yeah. I think there'd be a conversation for him at 3. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Jaden Daniels kind of in that same clump. I think there's a line of demarcation between Drake May and Caleb Williams and the rest. Now, that being said, I might be a little bit biased towards Drake May because from who I've spoken with, I've definitely spent more time on his 2022 tape when I thought he was a possibility for the Broncos bottoming out than 2023. And I guess his tape was better in 2022 and 2023. And I've not spent as much time with his last season of tape. So maybe it's closer between Jaden Daniels and Drake May than what is in my head. But I would say there's a difference between prospect caliber for Williams and May and the rest of that field.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels has come up a lot since Halloween. He's really proved himself on the field where that happens. Cutlow Butler says, I say we go after Russell Wilson. I think that's an option. I think that will be talked about. Broncos fans who hope to get a trade for Russell Wilson, I just don't see it happening. No. And that should settle itself here, the next 5 weeks? Yep. You'd hope it would be sooner than that, but they if he's still on the roster in 5 weeks, they owe him $37 more extra $1 million. So that's not going to happen when they've already benched him. So they wouldn't have to pay him that, and he's not going to accept a trade to do them any favors. So that should help themselves. It's like, why would I do a trade when you're going to just cut me anyway? And I can pick who the hell I want. It'll be just like Derek Carr last year. People were talking about trades.
Yeah. And how the contract works too is that the team that signs him is only on the hook for the league minimum, which would still be, it's not crazy, but how many years he's been in the league. It's not like, you're going to pay him $500,000, but Broncos are going to be on the hook for his roster hit this season, and anything that another team would pay him extra is going to subtract from the Broncos. So unless a team pays him more than what the Broncos are going to pay him this upcoming season, it doesn't matter how what the contract is from the other team. They're just going to give him the minimum, and the Broncos will be on the hook for the rest. So it makes sense for a short 1 year, maybe 2 year option with Russell Wilson if you're looking for that, understanding that he's probably somewhere in the 12th to 22nd best quarterback now, and probably going forward, you're probably never going to be a top 10 perennial quarterback at his age with where the NFL has gone and his style of play compared to the defenses today. But he definitely is somebody that could give you some competency there in that room that you haven't had for a bit. and could make you a much better team.
Rud Swarm says, good morning, Scott and Papa Nick. Scott, appreciate the clips you dropped on Penix Jr. and Bo Nix yesterday. Well, thank you. I was actually surprised. Y'all go give Bo Nix a little love. Michael Penix is outpacing him on YouTube about 10-1 right now as far as what's being watched. So my Michael Penix one has gotten picked up virally, so to speak, and is really driving traffic. Michael Penix is just kind of wallowing there. I was shocked. I did Bo Nix first because I thought it was going to go big. Not really. Go give Bo some love. Give him a like on YouTube. Red Swarm will have all 7 quarterbacks done today from day one. They've got 3 on one team and 4 on the other. And there's some interesting stuff there. I think it was hard not to look, Nick, at Joe Milton with that number 5, the dreads, some of the braids coming out, his size, his movement, and just not think Anthony Richardson. I mean, I think he's got a cleaner arm than Anthony Richardson too. What's the knock on him? Because if I'm looking at these guys for the first time, and for a lot of them I am, Joe Milton's the one that makes you, he's the chin scratcher. Like, man, he's got tools.
Yeah, he's going to go somewhere in the top 100, top 120, just because he is huge. He's a good athlete and has got a huge arm. But the accuracy, the ability to process under pressure just aren't there right now at Tennessee. And some of it's maybe that hypo offense out there in Tennessee. He's had injuries as well, but he got bypassed by, who was the quarterback for Tennessee last year that had a Hendon Hooker?
With the knee.
Yep, Hooker. He got bypassed by Hooker and didn't look back. And he had a chance this year and just erratic, just not very good in the accuracy department. Not always the most twitched up, a big athlete, but not twitchy, which matters for quarterback. I'd rather have a guy who's, Patrick Mahomes is not a huge, I don't know if you've seen the viral picture of him going around with his shirt off in the locker room. He looks like just a dude, but man, he is twitchy. He's like a tennis player out there, the ability to change direction. And I mean, that's one of the things that we loved about Drew Brees, right? He was an amazing tennis player, and you could see that with his pocket movement. But don't always see that with Milton. He's a little bit more build-up speed, so to speak. But still, the arm talent, the size, the overall athleticism, somebody's going to take a shot on him early just because the payoff would be so big. And a 4th round, 3rd round pick at quarterback, if it doesn't work out, I mean, you don't love it, but the risk reward there, if you do hit, well, giddy up, man.
Chris Walker says, morning, Scott. Would you say that Wilson reminds you of Darrell Boston? Now, I'm wondering if you mean David Boston, the wide receiver, David Boston. David Boston was a brick house. He was an outside linebacker. He was like 6'2", 230, and then I think he probably got bigger than that. He was a monster. Johnny Wilson is 6'6", 240 and leaner. He looks more like Kyle Pitts, and I wouldn't look at Kyle Pitts and say, oh, yeah, that reminds me of David Boston. I'd look at Cordero Patterson and say, that reminds me of David Boston, but not Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson's, he's lean. He's really lean. He's a good-looking athlete. Speaking of good-looking athletes, real quick, one of the guys, I was watching Darius Robinson out there in Missouri playing edge. In the second half, the second practice, I got to watch. They were doing some one-on-ones, and they were right in front of me. So I'm shooting video down here and coming back and trying to shoot video here and back and forth, and I could get 2 one-on-one reps for every rep they were doing in 7-on-7s. And I see Darius Robinson pop an offensive tackle with 2 hands, grab him, and just dispatch him. I'm like, huh. So then I'm watching, okay, then the next one, I think Tyler Guyton may have handled him. Okay, and then I'm watching him move inside. I'm like, wow, and he's wearing 6, and he's lean. He's in this all black. And I'm like, damn, I like this guy. So I come home, and I was like, all right, Robinson. I got my roster here in front of me. I haven't put it on a spreadsheet yet, which is just killing me. I'm like, all right, where's this 6th guy? Robinson. Darius Robinson. I still can't find him. Darius Robinson, he's number 6. Long story short, since I can't find him on here, God, I've got to get a numerical roster on a spreadsheet. He's like 6'6", 285.
Bigger.
I let out a legitimate holy shnikes. Except I didn't say shnikes when I found it. He's a monster. He's Zach Harrison plus. He's like, if you took Zach Harrison in the 3rd, it's like This is the guy who's got some traits. My goodness, I like this guy. I can't wait to watch him more in the 1v1s today.
Yeah, Darius Robinson, Missouri, played edge despite having that 6'5", 290 frame, and the arm length too, Scott, really stands out. 34 and 3/4.
Yep, with an 85-inch wingspan. He's,
Yeah.
he'd love this hotel room because he can get the TV and he can get the dishes without having to get up. He can sit right here and let me change the channel. Let me get my dishes over here without even having to get out of bed. Darius Robinson, y'all, that's someone I'm going to keep an eye on for sure.
And Scott, yesterday when you were trying to hush me a bit, because I didn't want to bias you, that was the guy that I really wanted to talk about before we entered it.
See, you didn't. He did it on his own.
But yeah, I'm curious to see. So he played mostly at edge at Missouri, and I wonder his ability to play inside on base downs if possible, given the frame that he has. You would expect, some 5 technique, maybe some 4-eye from him, but mostly played at edge. Does he have the ability to anchor? Can he hold up against double teams? Can he, bench press guys and then play the run? Or is he going to be, kind of a interesting niche piece as an edge rusher at that size? Because he is twitchy and long and strong at that, but he's not edge rusher, true NFL starting, great edge rusher, twitchy, long and strong. Could be a part of a package though. The guy who stands out to me, Scott, one that I kind of like, I felt like, man, I don't know. That's a weird body type for his role. Carl Brooks. We talked about him a lot last year. You're down at the Senior Bowl and you're like, yeah, I like this Carl Brooks guy. He's a weird frame. He's like 6'4", 290. I'm like, can he play interior? That's an interior frame. Well, he's been playing edge for Packers, not a starter, but somebody that they get rotational snaps in. They find a use for him, and just because of the body type and the size and the strength he has. When you run those twists and stunt games with him, you get him some one-on-ones, give him a pathway. He can do some stuff, and I think Robinson's better than Brooks. I'm just looking for a stylistic, usage pathway for him, and I see that as a potential early on. But yeah, Robinson really stood out.
And I'm going to get to Keith here in just a second. I like the tweeners. I do, especially on the defensive line, because, well, you can, if I want him to run stuff, if I'm in run defense, I'll move him outside. If I want him to pass rush, I'll move him inside. So, I started thinking of a guy like Yaya Diaby last year. He was one of those tweeners, and he's not as big. He's not nearly as tall. He's okay. Is he going to be too light in the shorts to play inside, or no? He's a hell of a pass rusher. A couple of years before that, a guy I thought of was Boogie Basham out of Wake Forest. And I think he's had a pretty good career, ended up going in the second round. But Keith Brugman, and far be it for me to say this guy's name without mentioning the fact that I've got an award for who has been paid the most for accomplishing the least in college football, and that is the Charlie Weiss Award. But Keith says, I was listening to Charlie Weiss, and he said the Senior Bowl is the worst. He stated that coaches are overwhelmed with people wanting jobs and everyone is partying at night. It is a job fair. It's absolutely a job fair, and there's college coaches there too, and there's media everywhere. I'm Keith. I'm here to work. If you couldn't tell by the stuff that I do, and I actually use this as a first of the year cleanse, so I don't spend a dime on food. I don't go out. I'm in the only luxury I have, like the only indulgence I have, is I'll go walk on the treadmill for 45 minutes and listen to a book to kind of clear my mind. Otherwise, dude, I ended up talking with Kevin from the Falcoholic. We sat together and shot the shnikes for a while, which is that, and the music is why all my things are muted. I get dinged by YouTube with the music in the background that they're playing at practice, but it's a job fair. A lot of them aren't doing a ton of scouting. They'll look at measurables and they'll watch and they'll get an idea and then they'll go back. But it's a job fair, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on at night as well. That's not me, dude. I'm here to work. 50-year-old alcoholic, man. I can't afford to go out. So appreciate you. Ryan Adonis, good question. He says, how do we know these quarterbacks are not just another Desmond Ritter in the making? You don't. And who's to say Desmond Ritter can't take another step forward as well as a third-year guy with some better coaching? I like what Zach Robinson has done with quarterbacks. I like what Arthur Smith did with Ryan Tannehill, but that's really only The only evidence we've had isn't, don't you think, Nick, as far as quarterback coaching or developing or success that Arthur Smith had?
Pretty much. That's all you could say. So small sample size. I mean, did he develop Tannehill, or was Tannehill already being developed there by Joe Philbin in Miami? I mean, he had a pretty good last year in Miami before they traded him. So
how I put it is, because I don't know how much I even believe in development at the pro level, man. You know, it's putting guys in their best situations to succeed. That's their job. Do you think that he did that with Desmond Ritter, or do you think Desmond Ritter was incapable of taking advantage of the opportunity that was presented him? I think it's a combination of both.
It's always somewhere in the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
Ritter, probably not the guy, 3rd round pick, limited tools, older, the turnovers. I mean, you put him in position to succeed but turnovers, that's on him. So I think it's a little bit of both. How do we not know that these quarterbacks, Desmond Ritter in the making? You don't know. I mean, Ritter could still end up being a fine backup quarterback. And as a 3rd round pick, that's not a horrible investment, or at least a hit. So yeah, it's we'll see about these quarterbacks. I'm not in on I know that there's been, the more I think about it, Broncos need a quarterback. That was like a 12. Take Nix, take Penix, take McCarthy. I'm uneasy about all those guys. 1st round, top 15 pick, top 20 pick, but we'll see. Things can change, and desperation for quarterback really changes things in the league. But I don't know about any of those guys that high, personally.
Jay Roper asks, Scott, did you get only 1 day of tape? Yes, I did. They've only had 1 day of practice. So day 2 starts in about 45 minutes. We'll go in about another 20 here. I'm 5 minutes from the fields, and I'm always panicking. I'm one of those early guys. If you're on time, you're late. OCD about that. And I get there and sit on my ass for 30 minutes before they actually do anything. So I'm not going to try and be calm. Not as bad as my mom. I actually took my mom to a movie before a flight we were supposed to get on. That's how early we were. I had like an orthodontist appointment when I was a kid or something. She's like, okay, let's go to the airport. I'm like, let's go to a movie, Mom. It's 4 hours before we're supposed to get on an airplane. So yes, only 1 day so far, but should get all 3 days because the weather is just perfect down here. JB asked, he says, did you see any Falcons brass out there, Scott? No, I didn't see any. The NFL guys are either on the field or on the other side, the opposite side of the stadium. And I'm not really looking for them. And again, I'm not socializing, as Jeremy says. Scott says, only luxury I have, then goes on to mention something not luxurious. Yeah, it's about the only time I'm not working when I'm here, though, is something to relax a little bit. Let me come down here a little bit. Here's a good question. Russell Webster on YouTube, he says, Scott, what are your thoughts on Arthur Smith getting hired by the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I think that's has to be better than Matt Canada out there with the Steelers. I mean, Arthur Smith, I think just pure offensive coordinator should be pretty good. He has some good run design stuff, and I think it brings a little bit of competency to that room. Arthur Smith, the head coach, failed, but that doesn't mean Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, would be terrible. And Steelers have been dreadful on offense the last 3-ish seasons. So I think it's a good hit for the Steelers. It's not, Nathaniel Hackett clown show going from Denver to the Jets. So I think it's a good hire for the Steelers.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm getting Patricia and Canada mixed up. Where was Patricia? Was he at New England?
He was.
Or I couldn't remember where he got another. And they hated him. Like, he was disliked.
He was an analyst somewhere this year. I don't remember exactly where. Maybe it was like Tampa Bay, but before that, he was like offensive coordinator in New England. And it was dreadful.
So I'm getting confused because I was going to say that Arthur Smith is really liked by his players. I think he'll get along there. The question now becomes, well, let's see Justin Fields in an Arthur Smith offense. Now that is a possibility. I mean, like, you go to Kenny Pickett. Is Kenny Pickett really an upgrade over Desmond Ritter? I mean, yes, but not hugely. Now, is Mike Tomlin in the Pittsburgh Steelers an upgrade over Arthur Smith in the Atlanta Falcons? Yes, they are. That's not a hot take, y'all. I apologize. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season in 20 years. The Falcons took 50 years to have back-to-back winning seasons. So the situation should be better, less pressure, less visibility on him. It's an interesting hire. they've got the personality that Arthur Smith wants. They want to beat people up. Good at running back, offensive line. Quarterback, though, becomes a question. So do the Pittsburgh Steelers make a shot at Justin Fields? Are they going to be one of your competitors for one of the quarterbacks you want to get? And as Kenneth says, and I'm going to run this over to you, he says, the Falcons are not looking for a quarterback. Blank and McKay stated that Ritter is here to stay. Robinson will be able to help him develop Ritter. After Smith, Ritter deserves an opportunity. Kenneth, there is no deserve in the NFL. You've got to earn it. And Ritter has two things going for him. Mainly the one is that he's dirt cheap. That's the main thing going for him. He will get an opportunity because he's been drafted. He doesn't deserve anything. He's got to now earn it. He played well enough to be on a roster somewhere. So being that he's cheap and he's adequate, I wouldn't send him anywhere unless it's part of a trade package to get another quarterback. He will get a chance. But the Falcons are going to be very, very aggressive in the quarterback market over the next 2 months, Nick.
Yeah, I always kind of bothers me about talking about guys deserving a shot. You're talking about a third-round pick. The fact that he got a chance to see the field at all is more than a lot of third-round picks at the quarterback position. So if you're not a top 10, first-round pick at quarterback, anything you get, you better run with it when you have that opportunity, because the hit rate for a quarterback outside of the first round is pretty damn dreadful. I mean, everybody, we'll point to the outliers, but they're outliers. Make no mistake. As I like to say on here, not to get too math nerdy, but a numerator is only as good as its denominator, right? So it's like, okay, well, we had Tom Brady hit 6th-round pick, Brock Purdy. Okay, well, how many 6th and 7th-round quarterbacks have there been in comparison to the hit there? Because there's your hit rate. It's not the one random guy. When you look at, first-round picks, it's a totally different conversation. So I don't know about Ritter deserving anything. He had a chance this year in a pretty solid infrastructure, kept turning the ball away and really just couldn't take that step forward. Didn't take it and run. And as a 3rd-round pick for a team that's now having a new regime, you better damn well have taken it and run with it last season. And he didn't at any point. So if they give him a chance, it's because he, I think, took it this year in the offseason. But they're definitely going to go in and look to upgrade the position in somebody that is a no doubt upgrade. And Ritter will still be here, like you said, still cost controlled, still a viable backup quarterback. But I don't know if you can go in next year with him. If you go in next season with him as the starter, something went wrong.
Yep. Yeah. And again, like I've said, if he wins the job, you've got to be aggressive in the quarterback market. If you get a guy, I spend big on a 1st-round pick. Ritter outplays him. Ritter picks up the offense better. Ritter is more calm. He's got everything going for him. Great. I've seen people almost apologize for rooting for Ritter. Obviously not Kenneth. And we don't care. If I have 3 first-round draft picks on Trey Lance and I luck into Brock Purdy and he ends up playing it close to an MVP level and takes me a Super Bowl, I don't care. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's Desmond Ritter. The Falcons need better quarterback play. If that ends up being Desmond Ritter, so be it. But they're not going into March with him as a presumed starter. I promise you that. If he earns it, great. Dave says, good morning. Again, there is no deserve. Now we're on to the earn level of this relationship. Is Zach Robinson at the practices? I don't know. I haven't looked enough, and I've been off of Twitter for the most part to see. That's the kind of stuff that someone like, D-Led might post. He's down, if he's down here, that, oh, yeah, these guys are here. I've seen. I don't. I'm on players, and I don't get good first takes because I'm watching it through a sun-baked screen that's about 3 inches wide. And when I'm leaving practice, like, oh, who'd you like? I'm like, well, I know I can name about 4 guys. And then I've watched, practices twice for specific guys, for quarterbacks and receivers. But there's some guys that popped. And let me see here. I don't remember. Brian, good to see you. Brian says, wear your sunscreen. We got lobstered. It started getting hot yesterday. I kept my long sleeves on. I kept a hat on. And then I slathered this side of my face where the sun was coming at me. So I'm gonna do that again today.
Have you watched the show? I Think You Should Leave.
Never heard of the show. I Think You Should Leave.
Okay, it's this pretty funny skit show. There's a scene where they're like some insider trading, and it's at his courtroom. And the main guy, Tim Robinson, I can't think his name, funny comedian. They're like talking about like, okay, insider trading, blah, blah, blah. By the way, did you see Dave in his freaking hat? What a loser. He's like wearing a fedora with like safari flaps in the courtroom. He's like, what the hell? Like they're just going on and on about him. Maybe you should find yourself a fedora with some safari flaps. I'll send you that. It's a funny.
I've got a couple from baseball coaching and stuff and being out there. I've got a couple Bobby Bowden. I'm old and don't care anymore what I look like. I don't want to. I used to ride a motorcycle full time, and I went to a combine. It's when I wasn't working. Long story short, I did a football camp in Jacksonville and flew back to LA and put my helmet on. Whoosh. Oh my God. My head was so burned. I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't care anymore. I don't tan and look good anymore. Now I just wrinkle like leather. To hell with it. So anybody deal. But Mike Swanker says, who do you look for in day two? The question, how I always answer this question, my swanker is whoever shows up. But in this case, my focus going in is OLDL. That's my focus going in. Now, whatever happens, depending on how the practices are set up, but usually on day two, I can get some pretty good offensive and defensive line highlights for y'all. And that's my focus going in. They'll play some team stuff, which is nice for everybody. That takes a long time to cut up because there's 11 guys you're watching. But for me, offensive and defensive line, and there's some good ones here. And one of the guys, Nick, you didn't mention yesterday that I thought was absolutely phenomenal on the offensive line. I do have an alphabetical one in front of me. It's Charles Turner out of LSU. He was playing interior, either center or guard. I couldn't tell for sure because they weren't really – it was one-on-one, so they're not really snapping the ball. 6'3.5", 300 pounds. Every time I looked up, the yellow hat on the offensive line was winning reps.
I'll have to check them out more today. Definitely did not come across my radar when I was watching them. I was on the Jackson Powers Johnson train, who was getting a lot of hype, probably going to end up being a first-round pick at that center spot. So I'll keep a lookout for Charles Turner. I love the size, almost 34-inch arm length, 6'3", 300. So, yeah, we'll keep him under consideration for sure. Looks like to be a pretty good offensive line class. Some guys did, underwhelm me a little bit yesterday in the interior offensive line. The center from Wisconsin, I thought, could have had a better day. And also Suma, I cannot pronounce the name, the offensive tackle from BYU, who is Kingsley Sumatiaia. I thought he could have had a better day as well. But really excited to see the matchup. I'm most excited to see day two is Talise Fuaga, offensive tackle from Oregon State, go up once again against Leatu Latu, edge rusher from UCLA. You're talking about two guys that are pretty consistently mocked in the top 20. And I think Talise Fuaga had the better reps against Leatu Latu yesterday. I'm curious to see if that continues.
They did some 1v1 callouts at the end of practice, and Latu got the better of Kingsley Sumataya out of BYU on a couple of them on those 1v1 callouts at the end of the day. Tavondre Sweat is a freaking monster. He's 6'4.25" and is so heavy he didn't weigh. So
that worries me.
He didn't want his weight known.
That worries me.
It should, but he's a beast. I mean, like Vita Vea is what you're looking at. This like, I remember, I think it was Nate Newton, may have been of the old Cowboys, said, I'm not the first 400 pounder and it may not have been Nate, doesn't matter. The phrase was, I'm not the first 400 pounder in the league. I'm just the first one to admit to it. I don't know if you saw Braden Fisk or what you know about him out of Florida State, 6'3.5", 295 pounds. That joker has a get off like a wide receiver at 295 pounds. His first step when he's in there next to Tavondre Sweat was nasty. So that's another one to keep an eye on today. And Dave says, good morning, guys. I'm starting to be intrigued with Bo Nix and Zach Robinson. Bo Nix, he's automatic is the thing. It's like he doesn't have anything that pop. His arm doesn't pop, but man, he just puts the ball in the place, just throws a catchable ball over and over and over and over. And if he's putting you in the right position and choosing the right wide receiver and making accurate throws, he becomes a very valuable quarterback, Nick.
Yeah, I don't see a first-round grade quarterback personally, but for the Falcons with 3 day 2 picks, packaging 2 of those to get up to pick 26, 20, maybe you rob a second round pick from next year as well. If you like him, you can still get a really good player at pick 8 and then move up for Nix and get that 5th year option if you want. I don't think I'd be using pick 8, pick 12 on Nix, Penix, or McCarthy. But Nix, I'm hoping to see a little bit more from him today. I want to see him push the envelope. I didn't really feel like there was any impressive window throws or anything where it's like, oh, wow, okay, that's a next level throw. I think he's making good, safe reads a lot, but the quarterback, it's always that fine line between being safe and hunting. You can't just throw up terrible footballs left and right because you're pushing the envelope too hard. You got to protect the football, but you also can't be, a check down Charlie afraid to hunt some tight windows out there. You got to hunt as well. And I didn't really feel that from Nix. It felt really conservative, bland.
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be good enough to operate an offense, but am I using a 1st round pick on that? I'm looking for more. I want more from my quarterback. I have higher standards there.
And I know the numbers he had are nuts, but 45-3 with 45 touchdowns against 3 interceptions, insane. I don't care who you're playing against. Mm-hmm. But does he look like a red zone quarterback to you? When you're getting in there, when everything is all tight and compact, you can't just lob it into spaces. Mm-hmm. You've gotta zip it in there. And I saw guys with, we'll see, because Devron comes in here with a $5 super chat and has a great question that kind of leads into this. He says, good morning, fellas. What do you think is too aggressive as far as trading up for a quarterback? Devron, I don't think you can get into the top 3. I think the first 3 are going to be quarterbacks, so you can't get one of those 3 guys. You're not going to get Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, or Drake May. All 3 of those teams need quarterbacks. They're not coming out of it. So I think trading up at all is too aggressive for a quarterback right now. That's what I think, because I think the top 3 are off the board, and I wouldn't move up to take another one.
Unless it's moving up from day 2. You're not moving up from 8.
Yeah, but I think we all kind of consider first round.
Yeah.
When with this question, Devron, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're talking about moving up from 8.
From 8.
I don't think you can get into top 3. I just don't. Justin Fields is going to be available. They're going to reset, take a better prospect, cheaper, 5 years of cost control with Caleb Williams. Start over. Now you've got the team around him. And frankly, I don't think this is necessarily anything on Fields. If Caleb Williams had been drafted 3 years ago with that team and gotten the hell beat out of him, you might be doing the same thing. They might be trying to move on from him and resetting the contract and taking a quarterback again this year and trading off their previous asset. I don't think it's an indication on Justin Fields as much as it is on, 1, Caleb Williams is a fantastic prospect, and 2, you love the contract. 3, the Chicago Bears are in position to build around a quarterback now. They've got the infrastructure in place. So they're going to take a quarterback. Washington needs a quarterback. Don't talk to me about Sam. All I can think of is Hartman. Yeah, Sam Howell. Sam Hartman. Today I've got Notre Dame on my head. Sam Howell. No. You don't pass up Drake May for Sam Howell. Just no way. Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones in New England, forget it. Yeah. Patriots are taking a quarterback. So you're not getting into the top 3. I'm not trading up from 8 for anybody else.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think I would not be looking to do that. I think there's a chance maybe with the Patriots there at 3, you might be able to get up. Let's say they have their heart set. Like this happens with quarterbacks fairly often. They like one guy specifically, Scott, and if their guy is not there, they're not as interested. So let's say the Patriots adore Drake May, but they're kind of out on Jaden Daniels. Well, once Drake May is off the board, you might have something when on the clock officially a move can happen. So I'll be curious to see. I agree that consensus is the top 3, but they're picky a lot of times with those quarterbacks. And when you're talking about a 1st round pick at quarterback, you're also talking about a top 3 pick at quarterback. You're talking about ownership getting involved too. So they kind of get their heart set on one guy. So I would say that I'll believe there's no trades that occur when it happens because there's a chance until the pick is in. So we will see. And if any team can trade up, I think the Falcons are probably situated in the best spot from aggression and assets situation. So we will see. Michael Latsky comes in here. Good to see you, Michael. Appreciate you coming in. Says, I don't care how cheap Ritter is. I want him gone. He was awful. I mean, he struggled last year, but I think he can come in and be a caretaker of an offense for a few games. I mean, how many backups did we see last year? He has familiarity with the the players around him. He's already here. He's young. As long as he can protect the GD football a little bit better, he'd be fine. You can't really have a backup come in and turn it over at the rate that he did. But I get it. He was not good enough last year, and you want more. But I think, as a backup, he's fine.
Yeah, Michael Lewitzki, good to see you. Appreciate everything you do for us. Real question. This is a strange. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name. No idea. But it says, I have a question. Who do you think wins Football Champions League this year? How about Real Madrid? Feels like them. I'm going to go Real Madrid on this one. City isn't quite as strong as they've been. Liverpool isn't. I think the Premier League is down just a little bit. So there you go on that one. So I'll go Real Madrid if they're in it. I haven't watched since Chelsea's gone in the tank. I haven't paid as close attention. Kenneth is just, I think like you're trolling at this point, talking about Desmond Ritter. Didn't Taylor Heineke finish his QB1? He's still under contract. So let's see. We're getting close towards the end here before we're about to get out of here. Want to hit on a couple last questions. Here's another one here.
We had White Boy Magic.
Boy Magic says, he says, people who say JJ is better than Penix and Nix is crazy. Yeah, I haven't watched them enough to know. I know watching Penix versus Nix, I feel like one has more translatable tools to the NFL, which is Michael Penix. But the injury history scares the bejesus out of me, and he would scare the bejesus out of me at 8. Nix at 8 is just too system quarterback for me. I think he'd be. We'll see. It's hard to look at the success he's had over the last 2 years at Oregon and say, oh yeah, he can't get it done. Dude, he got it done. I know it's 2 different levels and 2 different leagues, et cetera, but it's not like Oregon is playing, Houston and Case Keenum is putting up those numbers. I just want to see a little bit more NFL arm from Bo Nix. And JJ McCarthy, I haven't watched enough. I know the talk on him is they were so run heavy centric. Who was our boy from Ole Miss that 2-3 years ago we'd watch? Matt Corral is like, I'd tune in to watch Ole Miss and then they wouldn't let him throw. I'm like, well, that kind of scares me.
Yeah. I would say I also saw a comment further down from White Boy Magic that Nix and Penix are better than Caleb Williams and Drake May. I don't know if I'm with you on that one, White Boy Magic. Appreciate the super chat. The reason that teams will be a little bit more scared of those two, of Nix and Penix compared to JJ McCarthy, or might have JJ McCarthy lower, is that McCarthy is 27-1 in his career. He was the high school champion. Well, and I'll tell you what, I mean, I don't really care about quarterback wins, but I keep hearing people that are more in the know than me saying that teams do care about that. And when you've won that much and have that kind of demeanor around you, also his teammates love him, the intangibles. McCarthy's actually going to test extremely well. There's actually going to be, I think people are going to be surprised about how well he moves out there in the drills and the testing numbers. And he's also got some of the best numbers in this draft in terms of third down and drop back passing. Now the sample size is not high, but he has the most under center true drop back passes of any of the top quarterbacks in this class. And his numbers on 3rd and 6 and longer are some of the best in this class as well. Who's actually the worst in both of those stats is Michael Penix, surprisingly. They did a lot of his work on 1st and 2nd down this season, more struggles on 3rd and long and obvious pass situations. So I'm not saying for sure that McCarthy is better, but what are these teams drafting for, Scott? They're not drafting for who these guys are. They're drafting for who they think they will be. That dangerous P word, potential. Do you see the potential here? It gets a lot of guys fired, but that's how the NFL works, right? That's right. You have guys with these height, weight, speed, crazy measurables that didn't get sacks in the league going rounds and rounds before, you have your 6-foot ugly body type guys who don't test well that had the production. Well, in the league, what do we know? What translates? A lot of those athletic measurables, specifically talking edge rusher, defensive line, but I digress. So I don't think it's super crazy. And I also understand why some people would think it is off the wall when watching Nix and Penix versus McCarthy. Those guys are 4 years older, 4 years worth of reps over McCarthy. And McCarthy wasn't really allowed to toss it around the yard because they didn't have to win the football games there. So it'll be interesting. Going to be curious to see all those guys test, see how they do in the whiteboard session, see what they look like throwing side by side. I wouldn't be interested in any of them in the top 12 personally, from what I've seen from the unknowns versus what we have seen. But that's just me. And if you disagree, that's God bless you, man. There's a lot of there's more art than science a lot when it comes to evaluating these prospects. And you have to understand that there is absolutely no sure things. It's the human element, and you just do the best you can.
Yeah, trying to make predictions sound like facts are going to make you really make you sound really bad. I always try and leave an out in there somewhere. Michael asks, I like Latu, but the injuries scare me. What do you guys think? How long has he played healthy at UCLA? I know he was medically disqualified and then transferred down. Is he playing 2 years there healthy?
I think it's 2. Yeah, he was awesome yesterday. Except his reps against Talise Fuaga, who, if you have a chance, one of the first games I watched against Talise Fuaga, I was like, okay, I need to find him against the NFL guy. Let's put on the UCLA tape. Fuaga did so well against Latu that the second half, UCLA flipped him. They just said, you know what? We're not going to have him go against the right tackle anymore. This isn't getting it done. We're going to have you go against left tackle, and did a lot better then. But yeah, Latu is good. He's just so defined and refined with his hands. He has so many clubs in his bag, if you will, in terms of, the push pull, the club, the swim. Just he can really set edge offensive tackles up and get after it. I don't think he is the most explosive athlete in the world. He's not the longest, strongest guy either. So maybe is more of a designated pass rusher early on in his career, but he can get after it. And those guys who are really refined in their hands and their usage there, when they have the dip and enough tools like Latu has, that translates to the NFL in terms of sack production. I think of guys like Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa didn't test incredible. He's not a freak athlete. He's great, don't get me wrong, but he is so good with his hands. And I see some Latu there when I watch, or I see some Bosa when I watch Latu, just because the hands are so good.
All right, y'all. Real quick from White Boy Magic says Jordan Travis is the most underrated quarterback. We'll see. He might get Hendon Hookered this year as a possibility. Do you think might slip down just a little bit because of the injury, but should still get drafted and then excel? We talk about going after guys and what they could be, not who they are. Well, I'm not going to play them right away anyway. Why not take a chance and redshirt a guy, so to speak? Listen, y'all, we could go on all day, and I'd love to. I'm going to go learn some more about some of these guys we're going to talk about. So practice, they're on the field probably right now. They're going to get started here in about 15 minutes. So we're going to call it a morning for now, and we're going to head out. Nick, if it's cool with you, I want to go at the same time tomorrow so I can get out of here tomorrow. So if we can do Broncos for breakfast at Mile High Huddle on YouTube and Facebook, and then we'll also stream to youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. I want to go at 9 a.m. Eastern, just like we did today, if that works for you, because I got to pack up my gear and leave at the same time as soon as we get out of here. So that's cool with you?
That's fine. Yep, that's great.
Okay.
I did want to give one more. I know you have to cut it up here. We hadn't mentioned him once. Keon Mitchell, cornerback from Toledo, maybe the star of the entire Senior Bowl yesterday. He had a crazy ball production at Toledo. There was a game where he had 4 picks, and I think 2 of them were pick sixes. A really good, obvious athlete, played mostly off coverage at Toledo. And the question was, okay, can he hang as a press corner because he wasn't asked to do it so much at Toledo? He looked good there yesterday. I don't think we're talking about him at 8th overall, but Scott, if the Falcons trade back to 14 because somebody wants to come up for a quarterback there, and you're looking for cornerback, let's say Terrion Arnold's gone, Mike Mitchell more than Cooper DeJean. I think Mitchell's talked, but
do you think
moving himself up to top 20 pick?
He was really good. Like I said, I'm watching these guys through a 3-inch lens, and I'm not really even watching the corners. And I was like 7, 7, 7.
It's different. He's big too. He's
7. He's wearing number 7 out there, and he was defensive back, and it was 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. It was just, he was flashing out there. He looked really good.
Yeah. So hopefully we see a little bit better from the quarterbacks today. I was not overly impressed with Nix or Penix to the point where it's like, yep, that's a first-round pick. But will be fun. I think the trenches and the offensive line is the real area of strength in this year's Senior Bowl. It almost always is, because those are developmental positions. So a lot of times the older guys are better there. You don't have the superstars at wide receiver and cornerback because those guys tend to leave early, and they're not typically at the Senior Bowl. So that's kind of the case this year again as well. But trenches, specifically the offensive line. Hopefully the defensive line, some more guys can step up there a little bit better from Trevondre Sweat, a little bit better from McKinley from Texas A&M. But offensive line should be another fun one. And tight end and edge rusher as well. We didn't talk about Isaac from Penn State. He stood out. The edge rusher from Western Michigan.
Tight end Theo from Penn State looked pretty
Theo
good too.
Johnson, that's my guy. Yeah,
he had a good day too.
Yep.
All right. Listen, like I said, I got to cut Nick off.
Go. Yep.
I got to get going. I got to go to practice, y'all. We will be back tomorrow. YouTube.com/Scott Kennedy, Facebook.com/Scott Kennedy Sports, or Mile High Huddle. We'll probably stream to all of those. 9 o'clock Eastern. We'll have another day in the books. We'll probably talk a little bit more offensive line and defensive line. Hope you join us. I want to say thank you to our Super Chat superstars like Edward, Oblivion Empire, Greg, Devron, White Boy Magic. Appreciate y'all coming in. We're going to get out of here. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Peace.